A time ago, between the beginning of October to the end of November, every night I woke up between 3-5 in the morning. Every time I left my room, I felt a gaze so strong that it made me look directly outside my door that leads to my patio. I never saw anything, until November 1st when I saw a white cat completely focused in front of my door looking directly at my room. Without knowing what to do, I just opened the door, trying to get it to leave. I thought it was looking for food, so I offered it some. Throughout everything. That time he didn't move at all. I wanted to look him directly in the eyes and looking at him carefully. The cat had no pupils. That thing was really scary. His face looked like a goblin's face or something like that, and he had a very heavy look. I wanted to touch him, but my fingers barely touched his fur in my hand. Automatically took off. I felt an immense chill. I just went into my house and closed the door and hid in my room. My parents told me that they had seen the cat. They had even tried to pour water on it, but it never moved. We had to put a curtain from the ceiling to the floor, because we were afraid to go out and see it and feel its gaze. After November 5th, the cat just disappeared, and we never heard from it again. Luckily.
I was house-sitting for some friends, and they rent out part of their upstairs room for a cheap price to the local college students. I used to rent from them, and when I moved out, I moved down the street, so I was an easy contact for pet care or house-sitting while they were on trips. Needless to say, I knew the place well and was super comfortable taking care of it. Well, the first night I was around, I was cooking dinner and I heard something fall down the stairs to the upper bedroom. It sounded like a box full of books, like it was loud. The upper bedroom stairwell is closed off by a door, and I wasn't sure if the current tenant was around, so I knocked and asked if they were okay. I didn't get a response, so I yelled I was coming up to check on them. I opened the door and the stairwell was empty. No box, no nothing. Went upstairs and there was no tenant, and there wasn't anything I could see that was out of place. I was confused but summed it up as just something my mind made up. A couple nights later, I was getting ready for bed. I was staying in the downstairs guest bedroom, and there's a light that's on a slider that'll dim when someone adjusts it. There was also a sliding door I had closed to the bedroom. All this will come into play in a sec. Well, I was in bed and had the light all the way on when I heard footsteps upstairs. It was a heel-to-toe kind of sound, and it was making a figure-8 pattern in the bedroom upstairs. It was still decently early, maybe around 8 or so, and I texted the tenant to let her know I was downstairs and to let me know if I'm making too much noise to just shoot me a text. It was maybe an hour later, and I heard the footsteps again before receiving a reply from her. She said she was in the process of moving out and was actually out of town for 2 weeks, so not currently home. The footsteps stopped suddenly, and after a few beats, the sliding light in the bedroom slowly dimmed to off. I had about a second or two of silence before the sliding door to the bedroom rang out with a hug bang and started swaying on the sliding pole it was on. It looked like a person had punched it from the other side. Of course, when I opened it, there was no one around. I gathered my things and left the house. Still did all the chores throughout the week and took care of things around the home, but did not stay in that house after that. I didn't have anything spooky like that happen to me while I was renting the upstairs, but notably, there was an attic door that likes to open up in the middle of the night. I always thought it was just an old house, so stuff like that happens. But after this experience, I'm not so sure, lol.
I used to live in a very haunted house, which mostly kept its activities to a minimum. Noises that could be from someone or something that belongs in the house, but it wouldn't really make sense, or the unshakable feeling of being watched or followed. That kind of thing. Then my parents and sister left for 2 weeks, and my cousin, M, came to help me watch the house. I'm chronically ill and get overwhelmed very easily, and there are a lot of animals. My other cousin, J, her mom, came one night BC. We had been experiencing some crazy shit since cousin 1 came to stay. J has a lot of experience with the spiritual side of things. After she walked around the house, getting a feel for things, we stood in the hallway where all the bedrooms were talking. My parents' room was on the wall perpendicular to the one mine was on, and the entrance was opposite my door. As we're talking, my parents' double doors start buckling and it sounds like something was scratching at them violently. I, trying to remain calm and skeptical, told them that our cat, Lily, gets trapped in the bedroom frequently and it was probably her. As I reached for the handle, both of my cousins said, "That's not the cat." I learned later they had seen her in the living room. I opened the door, and behind the door was just black. I swear to God it felt like there was a vacuum or something behind it too, sucking the air in. Once the door was open, the scratching moved up the doors, up the wall and over our heads. There it got so loud it was hard for us to hear each other. It sounded like there were hundreds of fingers, scratching furiously at the ceiling and stomping up and down the hallway. There's no attic or crawl space above the hallway. The noise would die down, then redouble, and this carried on for minutes. Em and I were shitting ourselves. Later, Jay said it scared her too, but she kept it cool so we didn't freak out. She's one of the most awesome people I know. After it finally stopped, Jay wanted to go outside to check if there was anyone on the roof, just in case. No one was there. Additionally, on the side of the house we walked on, there are streetlights that illuminated a little. They're on the other side of the street. We had gone out there twice. Once just to see, and the again to check for a person or animal on the roof. The first time, it was so dark you couldn't see the ground, as you walked or even 3 feet in front of you. The second time, it was much lighter. We could see the ground and our surroundings, if with a little difficulty.
When I was 15, I was in Job Course out in Angel, Oregon, right near the edge of the Siasla National Forest. One night, about 10 of us decided to go explore the woods with flashlights. It was old-growth forest, with massive fallen trees. Trunks were wider than we were tall. We crawled under those giant logs, making our way through the woods, heading toward this pond we'd heard about. When we finally got there, we saw something strange. Across the water, maybe 75 feet away, there was this old 2-story white house, and in one of the windows, a single candle was burning. That alone was creepy. An old house, deep in the woods. But we were like, WTF. So to get a better look, we had to walk around this huge rhododendron bush. But as soon as we rounded it, the house was gone. Just gone. Like it had never been there. We completely freaked. And then we did what any group of teenagers would do after seeing a haunted house vanish. Into thin air, we screamed and ran like hell, convinced we'd just seen a witch's house and she was about to come after us.
Had lots of experiences, especially with very loud and clear EVPs, but one of the 2 things I never experienced was seeing a full-body apparition. Until I took a tour at an old jail. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to say the name of it, but it's well known. It was at the old Charleston jail in South Carolina, where the first female serial killer in America, Lavinia Fisher, and her husband, John Fisher, were both executed the same day. When I was on the tour, there were about 10 other people. It was as if it waited for me to be alone. The very moment when I was at least a dozen feet away from them, I saw a flicker, a change of light. Just barely caught it out of the corner of my eye. You know how sometimes a cloud will block the sun and suddenly it's darker? It was like that. It was as if it was trying to get my attention to look out the window. And when I did, I saw a tall, solid, opaque blacker than night, like a small living black hole. He had a large fedora-like hat on his head and was wearing a long overcoat that looked like a trench coat because it was so solid black. Ed was just walking across the lawn nonchalantly. It was a pebble-stone lawn with no trees or bushes, so there was no mistaking it for another shadow. After 4 or 5 seconds, it vanished into thin air.
When I was 19, Elle moved into my grandparents' house during college. They were mostly alone by then, except for my aunt and her 4-year-old son. I always had the feeling the place was haunted, but never saw anything myself, though others had, since I was in college and would at times stay up very late. One night, against my better judgment, I went downstairs to get a glass of water. My grandpa had a parrot in the dining room which he loved. I had to pass the parrot to get to the kitchen. Grabbed the water and again passed the parrot on my way back. The moment I stepped into the living room, the parrot started screaming. I turned and looked, and it was upside down with its wings, sticking out of the cage as if something was pulling them. I ran to the stairs screaming for help, and my aunt ran down, saw the bird and took it out to calm it down. It was terrifying, and the parrot died 3 weeks later. Then there was the time I stayed up till 2 a.m. studying, and when I called it a night, I turned off the lights and started to get comfortable, though anxious for me. 8 a.m. final. Suddenly I hear someone say shh in my ear. I'm the only one in the room. I was like, WTF, but at the same time I didn't feel scared. I covered my head and tried to fall asleep. I woke up 4 hours later to go to school, and as Ellum, opening the front door, I heard a child giggling right next to me on my left. Living room was to my left. I looked and no one. It's 6 a.m. I ran upstairs. My aunt was in the shower, and I look in her room, and her 4-year-old, the only kid there, was sleeping like a baby. By now I'm super spooked. So I run outside and out the door. They moved shortly after. I graduated, but there are other stories from when I was younger, though not as extreme.